talk about Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Right now, the Green Bay Packers are a perennial contender in the NFC. I've said a lot of good things about the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, but I look at the Green Bay Packers, I'm not sleeping on them. Trust me, this is one of the best teams in the NFL, and I look at the injuries to the Detroit Lions defense. I think the Green Bay Packers have a shot to not only cause a lot of havoc in the NFL playoffs, but possibly go to a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying they're going to go to the Super Bowl, they're going to win the Super Bowl, but when I look at the Green Bay Packers right now, they're one of the most underrated teams in the NFL. When you talk about this NFC North division, you hear about the Detroit Lions, rightfully so. You hear about the Minnesota Vikings and the job that Kevin O'Connell has done. Chef Kiss, he's been phenomenal. I want to give Coastal Flora a lot of credit. This man came in, amazing head coach with Aaron Rodgers, one of the best coaches in the NFL over the last few years. Jordan Love went down that week 1 game, got injured later in the game, late in the fourth quarter. Malik Willis had to come in for a couple of games. They won those football games. And Malik Willis was a terrible player with the Tennessee Titans. But you bring him over. Shout out to the general manager, by the way, Brian Gutekunst, to bring him in. You bring over Malik Willis. The kid looks like a brand new quarterback. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a franchise quarterback long-term for a different team. But he comes over to the Green Bay Packers and Coastal Flora switches everything around. They're catering to his strengths. Most coaches don't do this in the NFL. They want you to play their way. He went out there, he switched the playbook. It was more quick passes, get the football out quick, run around with Malik Willis, run the football with Josh Jacobs, get the football to Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. That is what elite coaches do in the NFL. It's not easy to lose your starting quarterback for just a couple of games and push in your backup and you're still able to go out there and win those games. That's great coaching. And shout out to Malik Willis for coming in and helping them win those football games because his services were desperately needed at that time. And that was a major problem that they saw in the preseason. The backup quarterback play was not good. The general manager saw that. Let's go out there, bring in a quarterback that has had some questionable moments in the past. Didn't look too hot with the Tennessee Titans, but this kid was very good in college. And I'll eat my words here. I did not think that Malik Willis was going to come in and be a very good quarterback for those couple of games. But he came in and he looked very good. Now back to Jordan Love. Jordan Love is a franchise quarterback. We saw this based off of what happened last season. Jordan Love was averaging an interception in every single game, but in the last 4 games, 8 passing touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He has played phenomenal. This is similar to what he did last year. On the back half of that season, 15 passing touchdowns to 1 interception. They went into the Dallas Cowboys' house in the NFL playoffs. This is not easy for a kid. This was Jordan Love's first season as a full starter with the Green Bay Packers. They just traded Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets. He goes out there, first playoff game, they beat the doors. They beat the brakes off the Dallas Cowboys. They go out there, they win that game, and they were in a close battle against the San Francisco 49ers. You build on those moments. He threw a similar interception that Brett Favre did against the New Orleans Saints. You build on those moments. And now we come back to this season. The Green Bay Packers have been consistently good. Their 4 losses have been against very good football teams. The first one was against the Philadelphia Eagles, first game of the year. You're still figuring things out. They were on that trash turf, bad conditions for the Eagles and for the Packers, but no excuses. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings by 2 points. They lost that game 31-29. You can make the case that the Minnesota Vikings were dominating them, but they went out there. They took advantage of a muff punt. Jordan Love scores a touchdown. They're back in the ball game. And they were scratching and clawing their way back in the game all day long. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions in that matchup. The next game that they will lose will be against the Detroit Lions, 24-14. I don't like to make excuses because every type of player may be dealing with something on the field that we don't know about. But Jordan Love was not healthy on that day, and he threw a pick 6 to Kirby Joseph. Shout out to the Detroit Lions for taking care of business. They lost that game 24-14 at home. And their last previous loss came against the Detroit Lions yet again. So you're not losing to bad football teams. You're losing to Super Bowl contenders. And I do believe if they run back those matchups, the Green Bay Packers could go out there and win those games, or those games are definitely going to be close. A lot of it is because now Jordan Love is fully healthy and he's not out there on one leg. He was hobbling around for a couple of games there. He wasn't fully healthy. I look at Jordan Love now, the way that he's able to maneuver in the pocket, get himself away from pressure, the way that this offensive line has stepped up also. Jordan Love is barely getting touched in the last 4 games. He's delivering the football on a dime to Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. And speaking of Romeo Doubs, he missed that game against the Detroit Lions on Thursday night. They lost that matchup by 3 points. Their defense steps up. They go out there and they stop the Detroit Lions, and they're not able to go out there and bleed out clock. Maybe you put the football back in Jordan Love's hands and you win that football game. When I look at the Packers right now, you have Jordan Love, who is red hot in the last 4 games. They're 4-1 in their last 5 matchups. You have Josh Jacobs. I hear a lot about Derrick Henry, a lot about Saquon Barkley. Josh Jacobs looks like prime Marshawn Lynch. He is just running over people over and over again. A great free agency signing for the Green Bay Packers. And trust me, he's not the only one. I'm going to talk about the other big guy that they got on the defensive side of the ball. But I look at Josh Jacobs. He's 3rd in rushing yards in the NFL. 1,147 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, averaging 4 yards a carry. And it was imperative that he had to step up, because that's why they moved on from Aaron Jones. They moved on from Aaron Jones because he wasn't able to stay fully healthy and he was getting older. They wanted a younger running back. Josh Jacobs last year did not have a great season with the Las Vegas Raiders, but the year before he led the league in rushing. He's looking like how he looked when he was his former self in a good situation with the Raiders. When you look at the wide receivers, they have 4 wide receivers that can give you problems. Christian Watson, phenomenal going deep down the field. He's the big playmaker. And I still think that he has the highest upside with the Green Bay Packers. You just worry about him dropping the football here and there. But he'll get you a big play. If you need some momentum, you need a guy that can just go out there and take the top off the defense, you go to Christian Watson. Can catch the slant route, can take it for 50 to 60 yards. Romeo Doubs, more so the do-it-all wide receiver. You go to him in blitz situations. If the team is going out there, they're sending more pressure than you expected, you get the football to him. He has for sure hands. And Romeo Doubs has been very good this season when he's been fully healthy. He went out there against the Seattle Seahawks on 3 catches. He had 2 receiving touchdowns and 40 yards on the day. A very good player to have. Dontavian Wicks, very good underrated wide receiver. Doesn't get talked about that much, but when he comes to the lineup, he's very good. I know that Jaden Reed did not have the best day against the Detroit Lions, but he's still a very good football player. Don't get it twisted. This is a man that has 727 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns on the season for a reason. He's averaging 15 yards a catch. Players have bad games. It's going to happen. I'm not going to hold that against him. And when you have wide receivers like this, you don't really have a true number 1. If you want to be technical, their true number 1 would be Romeo Doubs, because he is more essential to the offense than Jaden Reed. But Jaden Reed is also impactful when they're able to get him the football. But you have 4 wide receivers that can give you something different. You have this big tight end in Tucker Kraft, who has been phenomenal all season long. Tucker Kraft is a top receiving tight end in the NFL. He's a big playmaker to have. And he's very athletic. Sometimes I'm looking at him, he looks like a big slot wide receiver moving on the field. And he's amazing in blocking also. Luke Musgrave has missed majority of this season dealing with an injury. So Tucker Kraft has really just stepped up into that role into being the top tight end with the Green Bay Packers this season. And he's just a very good player to have around. A solid, for sure-handed tight end. 7 receiving touchdowns on the year. He's averaging 14 yards a catch. I look at this offensive line. I love him from tackle to tackle. Josh Jacobs is a very good running back. Don't get me wrong. One of the best running backs in the NFL. But every good running back, you got to have a good offensive line that's opening up rushing lanes for you. And we saw this offensive line go out there and dominate against the San Francisco 49ers. They were bullying the Seattle Seahawks for the majority of the game also. They bully defensive fronts. And in order to win in the NFL, you have to win in the trenches. The Green Bay Packers have that. They have that with Jordan Love at the quarterback position, franchise quarterback. You're able to win in the trenches with this offensive line. You now have a running back that you can depend on. Aaron Jones was a very good player. Don't get me wrong. I still like him. He just couldn't stay healthy. You now have Josh Jacobs who can stay fully healthy. And you look at Emmanuel Wilson, the backup running back. He's solid when he comes into the game. But Josh Jacobs is the bell cow. And you look at these wide receivers. If one of them goes down, it does suck. But you have another guy that can come right back in and that can give you help. I remember a couple of years ago when Aaron Rodgers was in his last season with the Green Bay Packers, there was so many complaints. The guys are too young. They don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. They should have kept Devontae Adams. No, you lead up to moments like this. This is called development by coaches. Give the players a lot of credit for going out there and stepping up and for playing. But Coach LaFleur, I can't say this enough. The job that he has done has been great. Because if this was any other team, most people were just talking about the coach. This is a young football team. He's basically went out there and drafted these guys and helped develop them. They didn't go out there and trade for a number one wide receiver. They developed all of these guys, including Jordan Love. They traded up to get Jordan Love. And the one thing about the Green Bay Packers, over the last 3 decades, they're going to have a franchise quarterback, whether it's Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Jordan Love. This is one of the best organizations in the NFL in terms of not just going out there and completely blowing up their team and just rebuilding. They always contend every single year. And when I look at this defense, it's night and day. Last season, you had a horrible defensive coordinator and Coach Joe. Joe Barry was terrible. You bring in Jeff Hafley, comes over from Boston College. He's Boston College head coach. I still have a couple problems with him because of defensive rotations on the defensive line. Sometimes they don't make sense. But over the last 3 games, he has been better with that. And I will put that also on the players. You have to step up. This is a defensive front. The pressure hasn't been consistently there all season long. Rashawn Gary, very good football player. I look at Lucas Van Ness, also a very good player. Only 3 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble. Very underwhelming. Kenny Clark, I like him. Not the best season of his career, not a bad player. Devontae Wyatt, I really like him. He stepped up as a top defensive tackle so far this season in terms of pushing the pocket, putting pressure on the quarterback, and just completely stopping the run. And don't get me wrong, Kenny Clark is still a good football player. And I look at Quay Walker, just a tackle machine to have. He's the guy that's not going to go out there and do much in pass coverage. He's not known for that. He's known for being a thumper. You need guys like that because you have to win in the trenches in the NFC and in the NFL playoffs. You're going to be facing teams in the playoffs like the Minnesota Vikings, Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders possibly. All those teams, they love to run the football. The same with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have the 5th best rushing offense in the NFL. You got to have some gap responsibilities there. I'll give Coach Jeff a lot of credit for that. In the last 3 games, they have looked better against the run. I know that they did let up a big run to Zach Charbonnet in the Seahawks game. You still went out there, you won that football game. But when I look at the secondary, this is where things get very good. Jair Alexander has missed a lot of time. The last time that he played was against the Chicago Bears. And I hope that this knee injury doesn't linger into the postseason because the Green Bay Packers, they're going to make the NFL playoffs. The rest of their schedule is pretty easy in my opinion. You face the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football without Derek Carr. That should be an easy win for the Packers. And I understand it's the NFL. Any given Thursday, Sunday, or Monday, this is the Packers we're talking about. Well-coached team. They don't get those mean penalties. You're going against the New Orleans Saints team without their starting quarterback. I expect for the Packers to win that matchup. I expect for them to dominate on Monday night. But I look at this secondary. I had so many great things to say about Josh Jacobs. You brought him in free agency. You went out there, you bring in Xavier McKinney, who has been the best safety in the NFL this season. Kirby Joseph also has 7 interceptions with the Detroit Lions. Very good football player. In terms of man coverage, stopping the run, zone coverage, Xavier McKinney has been the best safety in the NFL. This is an all-pro safety. This man is phenomenal. Just breaking on the ball, flipping his hips, going out there and stopping tight ends from getting open. When you hear about scouts saying, hey, the hip movement, is he fluid? This is what they talk about with Xavier McKinney. He's a ball hog. He is just a great cover safety to have. And don't get it twisted. He can also run the foot. He can also stop the run as well. I like their secondary. Hopefully Jair Alexander can come back, especially in the postseason. He's still their top cornerback. Jair Alexander is a true glue-to-glue corner, can go out there, press man coverage. You're not going to get past him that much. He's going to pin you to the sideline. He's going to make sure that he doesn't give up big chunk plays down the field. And he's a veteran. Keyshawn Nixon has been solid in the secondary. He stepped up in a big way this year. He's been a very good player. He's been the true number 2 cornerback, really their true number 1 since Jair Alexander has went down. You have Carrington Valentine, who has also stepped up within the last couple of weeks. I like this. I like what the Green Bay Packers have. I like them flying underneath the radar because they could come out of nowhere and they could possibly, quote unquote, upset a team. They were just a couple plays away last year from making a deeper playoff push. The Green Bay Packers are legit. And what happened last season has helped shape them to this season. This is why development is important in the NFL. And I understand not every single year is the same year. We're in a different year. I fully understand that. But this is why you go out there and you make the moves that you do through the NFL draft. You build the chemistry with your wide receivers. You build the chemistry with your tight ends. Jordan Love has basically grown up with these guys. They've all come into the NFL together, basically. I understand they drafted Christian Watson, those guys, maybe a little bit after Jordan Love. But Jordan Love's on the sideline watching Aaron Rodgers. He's paying attention to what he was doing on the field, and he learned from that. The Packers are one of the few organizations in the NFL that still do the classic mold. They do the blueprint. Let the quarterback sit for a couple of years, let him sit for just a year in some cases. Then he goes out there and he's ready to play, and he plays like a veteran. Will there be some bonehead mistakes that make you scratch your head with Jordan Love? Sure. The same thing happened with Aaron Rodgers, and the same thing happened with Brett Favre. Interceptions are going to happen. It's a part of football. But do you learn from it? That's what matters the most. Guys like Jameis Winston haven't learned from it. Will Levis hasn't learned from it. When you come to the Green Bay Packers, look at Malik Willis. He had a turnover problem at times with the Tennessee Titans. Comes over with the Packers. He doesn't have that turnover problem because he learned from it. And the same with Jordan Love. Do you learn from it? Don't throw interceptions to cost your team the football game. He's not throwing key interceptions in the last 4 games. And that has also helped push them over to the top. This is a group effort by the Green Bay Packers, and I love their outing against the Detroit Lions on Thursday Night Football. Sometimes the ball just has to bounce your way and you just don't win the football game. I know some Packer fans don't want to hear that, but sometimes it's not your game to win. But I look at the Detroit Lions right now with all the injuries that they're dealing with on the defensive side of the ball. I look at the Packers right now. They're rolling. Maybe they go out there and they win that game. They face the Minnesota Vikings again. Maybe the Packers go out there. It's a different situation. I like the Green Bay Packers. I love Coach LaFleur. I like what they have going right here. They're trending into the right direction. In terms of being a low-key Super Bowl contender, I would say the Green Bay Packers are one of those teams, but at the same time, they will be in such a better light if they were in a different division. Unfortunately for them, they're in the best division in the NFL. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Green Bay Packers, and are they a perennial contender in the NFC in your opinion? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless.